Well, greetings. My name is Wayne Frymond. I'm on the faculty of the University of Montana's College of Forestry and Conservation. And today I have the pleasure of sharing with you some of the programs we've been involved with that have to do with capacity building for professional management of protected areas and in an international context. Okay? So I'll use three different cases to describe some of the types of work we're doing. One is a program that we've hosted here at University of Montana for 15 years. Another is a program, a research-oriented program that we've been involved with in Southern Africa for quite a while as well, almost 15 years. And then I'll give an example of a newer one that we're just starting with the Royal Society for the Conservation of Nature in Jordan. Okay? And then we'll probably be out of time. Okay? So just chime in with questions, I think, whenever you have them. Okay? Okay, so many people may not realize that 12% of the world's terrestrial land base is in some type of a protected conservation status. That's quite a bit of land, and it requires quite a bit of management to keep it healthy and functioning. In the United States alone, the federal land managing agencies for our national forests and our national parks employ about 50,000 people. So if you think of that at a global scale, the need for professionally trained managers to engage with all of these complex social and ecological issues is really high, and it's growing. The sentiment now within the conservation community is to try to increase that 12% target to 15 or 17% in the next 10 years. That would be equivalent to about the size of Australia being put into some kind of conservation status. Okay? The easy areas, the remote places that are large land bases, are largely protected already. So this increase is going to happen at interfaces where there's a lot of people probably and a lot of complex issues associated with that. So managing land and managing conservation now is more than ever a global effort, and one that requires as much social consideration as ecological consideration, and it is only going to increase. Okay. So how do we build capacity for new countries to, that are beginning this odyssey of protected area management to come up with a qualified, adequate, professional workforce? And how do we share what we have in the U.S. and some of the things that we've learned with our 150 years or so of experience? Okay? And that's how we're sort of fitting in. The work that we've been doing here at the College of Forestry and Conservation has largely been guided by the principles that are laid out by this gentleman named Jonathan Cook. He's a political scientist from South Africa that watched the transition of South Africa from the apartheid to the new democratic regime of governance. And as you can imagine, that resulted in a lot of people getting new opportunities for jobs that were previously disadvantaged. And there was a huge amount of pressure on those people to be able to rise up to high levels of decision making extremely quickly with a previously disadvantaged background to make those choices. So they went through an incredible exercise of capacity building, South Africa in general, in all sectors of their society, and in conservation particularly is where we engage them. Okay. Anyway, what Cook tells us to think about is that it's easy to give somebody skills, and it's actually not that hard to give them the opportunity to use those skills. And that will create capacity, perhaps, and create potential to use it. But the ingredient that's often missing is for that person to have the confidence to move forward and take advantage of the opportunity when it comes up. And if these things are new, or if the types of training that they've had has been so technically driven that they weren't able to develop their own sense of agency in making decisions, you're never going to reach the potential or move that potential into productivity. So as an individual, we need to think of our programs addressing competency, opportunity, and confidence, and that can be dealt with programmatically if you give it some consideration. We also need to think about organizations building their ability to absorb people with more capacity. And so we've done quite a bit of work with places like South African National Parks or the Brazilian National Park System, ECM-EBO, or groups like I'll tell you about with the Royal Society for the Conservation of Nature. And they're thinking system-wide, and how do they develop an organization that can deal with the complexity that is surrounding conservation in this era, okay? But they have to be adaptable, and they have to, at an organizational level, build in feedback so that they can learn. And they have to be okay with failure. Now, most managers, when you talk to them, don't want to come home with a big fat failure to tell their boss, oh, I needed a promotion because I took this great risk and it didn't work. But guess what? I learned something out of it. And that's exactly the paradigm that we're trying to move toward, because the pace of change that we deal with now, the amount of complexity that we have, the amount of uncertainty that we focus on all the time, means that we're never going to get it right all the time. We have to be willing to just continuously learn. And if I train somebody here with a great new idea and they go home and pitch it to their organization only to have it shut down because nobody's willing to entertain a new idea, then it was a waste of everybody's time and money. All right. So here's how we got started with this. One of the things that we probably take for granted in a place like Montana is that our conservation system and our education systems grew up together. The land grant style of education for forestry schools, for example, or agricultural schools, evolved at the same time that we were developing our Forest Service and our parks and all of that. So for us, it's second nature to have universities and managing agencies work side by side on issues. My students are working in Yellowstone and Glacier, and our students from our college are seeking advice from scientists in the Forest Service, or we work together to accredit our programs and make sure that the skill sets we're providing are going to make these people employable. That's second nature to us. It isn't necessarily the case in a lot of countries in the world where you have an academic institution that's focused on research, refereed publications, and patents, and then you have a management system that would sure like to have applied things happening and interacting. Okay? So it was not surprising for the U.S. Forest Service to contact us in 2000 when their Office of International Programs had decided they would like to develop a seminar to help share what they do with protected area management to the global audience, because they are working internationally, providing technical assistance and support in many regions of the world. They provide the on-the-ground technical assistance on forestry issues for USAID, for example. And they help with disaster relief, and they help with fire training, and all kinds of things around the world. And they also have a lot going on with protected areas, and thought, why don't we get some of that going on? So they contacted us and some of our partners and said, could we work with you to develop a seminar where we could bring people from the parts of the world that we're working, and you could help guide them through this capacity building process and build relationships and get a global conversation started. Right? So we did our first one in the year 2000. We just completed our 15th one, and in that time we've had over 400 participants come to our 1-month course here in the summertime from, I'm pretty sure it's 82 countries, give or take. It's getting harder to get new countries. We focused primarily on developing countries rather than highly evolved European countries, for example, because they don't need the training nearly as much as other places in the world do. But our typical group will have people from 20 countries, and the way we've organized it is to not only share knowledge so that they can get competency and ideas, which hopefully they have the opportunity to use, but we've also very much designed it to be a classless kind of system so that everybody's a leader and they see themselves in that role on a global stage, working toward this idea of building the confidence that when you go home with this stuff, you're going to actually be able to do something with it. And we travel from Missoula up toward Glacier and down to Yellowstone, meeting with national forest managers and park managers along the way. They all leave with an action plan, And now it has created a really nice network of people that we work together with on a day-to-day basis. Okay? Our themes that we worked with the inaugural group to develop were issues of integrated planning and protected areas, community involvement, tourism, concession and visitor management, and how to deal with climate change, especially in these transboundary contexts that you have to deal with it. We've learned that in 82 countries, those 4 themes resonate with everybody that's worried. One of them or another does. So while we have this global complexity, we have an awful lot in common in terms of the challenges that you face for the basic idea of a sustainable planet. We have people that need to live here. We have places we want to protect. They don't always coincide with each other's agendas. How do we do it? Okay? So we've learned that in English and with these thematic ways, we can carry on a wonderful conversation over a 25-day period of time that leaves everybody feeling a little more inspired about what they can do. So sometimes we're dealing with substance, and sometimes we're dealing with culture as well, and sharing our cultures. This is an example of, we always have to teach people what football is. They think around the world that football means soccer, but it doesn't, okay? So we teach them things like this. And we meet people like Sonia here, who actually have these very prominent positions in their country. Sonia is from Brazil, and at the time she was here, was managing the public use planning for the entire park system of Brazil, and has then since come back here to do her doctorate at the University of Montana. Okay? So it's a wonderful recruiting ground for not just a global audience, but a very valuable global audience. Our leadership has largely come stimulated from the Forest Service, from Val Mazinas, who directs the Office of International Programs, and Alex Mode, who runs their Technical Assistance Program in Washington, D.C. And they have got along for a long time, understanding the need to network and to build capacity from a multiple set of players, and had no problem coming to academia and saying, let's work together on this. In fact, we worked originally with the University of Idaho and Colorado State to develop this consortium of how to do this, and we brought expertise from each of those universities. So sometimes when we're thinking in another country, it makes it easier for our colleagues and competitors to work together on something here. Okay? We learned that in Montana, we have examples of most of the global issues that people are dealing with in one way or another. Here's Madison Junction and Yellowstone Park, where the idea of the national park was hatched. And that's a very nice metaphor to use in terms of understanding how things have evolved over the last 150 years. So it's nice to have that. And we're, in this part of the world, facing increasing transition of economies from very extractive-oriented to service-oriented, and a lot of amenity migration. So now we're dealing with development and up and close to our protected areas, not just for industry, but for lifestyle. And that creates a lot of issues in dealing with changing things. We have concerned citizens. This is a retired school teacher who is monitoring the water quality in her own backyard because she's worried about the golf course that's being developed upstream from her. And we have people worried about their water sources all over the world. So it's a kind of a concept that everybody can resonate with real quickly. We have people that want to build business into and we have this balance of how commerce and protection work together. Money and conservation are huge issues around the world. And this gentleman was running the Glacier Park Inc. program at the time up in Glacier, and was literally pitching to us that we should be using more of a Disney model to manage the visitation in Glacier Park. The superintendent didn't look real thrilled with the idea, but it really did frame a nice discussion and debate about how we should be managing our areas. We've got outstanding opportunities of tribal governance and tribal land management in Montana. This is Tom McDonald up at the Salish and Kootenai, and they have a very sophisticated natural resource program. Indigenous issues and land tenure are enormous issues around the world. And we don't have answers, but we can provoke a wonderful conversation that might come from 20 different countries on how do you deal with it and how do you deal with it. It's literally an ability to think outside of the box. And one of the nice things in Montana is the accessibility of our governance system. if you want to see the governor and you have a group of people, you just get on the calendar and you can go see the governor. That is not the case in a lot of places. The mayor greets our groups every year. And so some of these things we learn about ourselves through bringing people from other countries on just how good we have it in Montana. And of course, they bring to us this fantastic enrichment of culture and the ideas and traditions and spirit of the world. Okay, so in terms of individual capacity, the way we've organized that is, as I mentioned, to give a substantive background on issues and provide a detailed conversation of thematic issues. We want to increase and contextualize people's knowledge. Each participant gives talks, has the opportunity to be a leader in the group, and has the ability to do that in a global kind of conversation and setting. We don't care if you're a minister of environment or an entry-level ranger. You might be sharing a room and the instructors drive, they cook, they bring you to their house. We just get rid of all of this class distinction right off the bat. And I think that helps a lot, because in a lot of places you would never have, we have to be careful to make sure somebody isn't making somebody else carry their bags, through the course. And you can do that. If you go home with a plan and a network and a little more of a vision of yourself, hopefully that's done something for you. We get wonderful responses back from people, and I think we've got a decent model there. Okay, here's the second case. This is work that also stimulated a little bit out of our seminar, and it started with some people that came and helped us frame the seminar at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. And our first interaction with them was in 1998, so we're getting up there now to like 16 years, I think, that we've been working together. They engaged us just 4 years after getting a new constitution and an amazingly evolving society, and a desire to integrate academia with their conservation interests. And up until that time in South Africa, things were very siloed academically. You had a zoology program, or you had a wildlife program, or you had a botany program. But the kinds of programs that we have in forestry that try to put it all together hadn't quite evolved there yet. So they were looking for help with curricula, okay? And conservation there and here had a lot in common. And they also wanted to build some regional capacity. So they engaged the University of Montana to help with curricular discussions. That's how it started, okay? We found out we had a lot in common. We've got the Butte mine and they've got mines. And we've got wolf reintroduction and they're trying to save rhinos. Our issues are so similar. So we started out building our common knowledge. For the first 4 years was just exchanges. Some of our faculty would go there, we'd bring some faculty here. We got some students to come back and forth, doctoral students, that could help us understand what their research needs were. And we got to know the people in South African national parks, which is the equivalent of our national park system. That led to the design of some curricula, but it also quickly led to their recognition that they needed research to support that curricula, and that research needed to be African. It couldn't come from Montana or Idaho or the UK, not in the long term, maybe in the beginning, but they needed to build their own capacity, and it needed to be in their own context. So our next wave of this, I don't know if this actually does something, was to develop a research program that we called the Treehouse Program for People in Conservation. And the idea there was to build a cadre of colleagues that could work on a common set of questions from a research perspective, and to try to fund graduate students that could get involved in that and could push us all to a new level of thinking about how this conservation model was going to work in a new South Africa. That in turn taught us so much about how we do conservation in the United States, and their critique of our systems was incredibly valuable for us. Then we moved on in 2009 into a kind of a bigger professional training idea that brought in a series of other universities. So here's the treehouse. We needed something that didn't have a university identity or an agency identity. We wanted something that was neutral ground. And our first meeting was in this building in Kruger Park in South Africa, and it was called the Treehouse. And so we decided that was as good a name as anything for our research program. And inside of that treehouse, we were trying to have meetings and make plans and all of that. But just over here is a river, and elephants kept walking out into the river. And so someone would be trying to give a PowerPoint, and the whole audience would get up and walk out and watch the elephants and come back. But it was there that we hatched a bit of a plan and a strategic idea. And from that, we created a nice cadre of professionals from the University of Montana, University of KwaZulu-Natal, South African National Parks, and Kruger National Park in particular. All of these folks that were then students are now professors, or they are leaders of a large program. Like Nyambe here is the #2 person, where did he go, for WWF in Zambia. They've, it was a good time when people needed high-level thinkers really badly, and everybody that got involved in a PhD program or a research program and got those skills was quickly absorbed into the system. And for us, it was fantastic because they grew this network not only to our research group, but all these institutions that they moved into, all the different universities that they're teaching in. So in that first round of research, we came out of it with roughly 30 journal articles, 4 book chapters, 14 doctoral dissertations, and 6 master's theses. About 2/5 of that were Americans and 3/5 were Africans. So it was a nice kind of blend of the students, but leaning toward the African way. And we had a number of different faculty exchanges. We worked in conferences, both here and in Africa. And it was just really a wonderful experience. So not only did it create the stuff we need to get tenure and that sort of thing at the university, I think it deeply affected the people that were involved. And these people spent a lot of time in Montana, in our homes, with our families, and affected people like my son, Udo. When he wrote his college entrance essay, he wrote about some of these guys. It had a profound effect on them, and certainly on those people that got involved in it. They look back now, and they had a nice enough, positive enough experience that they go the extra yard to keep that relationship working. So anyway, now we've got people spread out into a bunch of universities, and so our next evolution of this was to expand the institutions involved. We created a new MOU around a program called INSACA. And now that one includes the University in Namibia, Monash, South Africa, Copperbelt University in Zambia, and KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. And now the University of Montana is the one non-African partner in the group. And this was kind of what we hoped would happen. The original question I had for them when they contacted us was, why do you want your credibility to come from 8 or 9 time zones away from where you live? And we can work together to get things started, but really your own institutions are the ones that need to grow to make this work in the long term. And it has happened. So it's much more of an African-centered leadership model now. They are really focusing on benefit sharing relative to conservation, and how to build relationships with civil society and governance relative to conservation. They are very interested in what they're calling a community of practice, to build a cadre of not only academics, but people working in communities, working with agencies around Southern Africa. It's a fantastic evolution. So here's how something like INSACA comes back eventually to help us at the University of Montana. And I wish I could say this was all planned, but it never works out this way. So here's Nellie Mwango. Nellie just finished her PhD. She's worked on it for quite a while. She came here for a year as part of the Treehouse program, and she worked on her doctorate with us. Nellie, as it turns out, her father was the dean of the forestry program at Copperbelt University. None of us knew that until she got here, and she said, would you look at a proposal that we're thinking about for Copperbelt? And I said, your dad is a, yeah. And so we we started working on how could we maybe work together with institutions rather than just individuals. So we started working with the then dean of the Jacob Mweetwa at Copperbelt University and developed the INSACA program, and they became a partner within it. Okay? And we have almost like our INSACA family is built right into this. Well, one of their staff is Jane Quainier, and Jane is an instructor at Copperbelt who had a master's degree in environmental economics from the UK, but wanted to get a PhD. Copperbelt has a program to support faculty members to move from the master's to the PhD level because they are really in need of upping their entire kind of credentialing. So Jane gets to know us through INSACA and is currently in her third year of her PhD here at the University of Montana. She's collecting her data in Livingstone, Zambia as we speak, and should wrap up by the end of this year. Jane then helped us develop in Livingstone, Zambia, the first study abroad program that University of Montana students will have in Southern Africa. So we'll start that in May. So at the same time she gets her degree, she will be co-hosting with Copperbelt a group of undergraduate students that will come there to study nature-based tourism and sustainability. And this is just one of the examples of a place there in Livingstone. And I don't know of anywhere in Montana that a student's going to get to pet a lion or work with the people that are actually doing that. So it takes quite a while, a little bit of luck, and a lot of kind of relationship building. But eventually all this stuff comes tangibly back to helping us in one way or another here at UM. Okay? Not just at a research level, but our students as well. Okay? The last case I'll go through is in Jordan. This is Petra, an amazing place. You might know the Treasury building here from Indiana Jones running out of it in one of his movies. And similarly, the country of Jordan wants to build the capacity to professionally manage their protected areas. And they have a very different model than we have. It's run by the Royal Society of the Conservation of Nature, which is an NGO that was appointed by the king to manage the park system. Okay? So a monarchy instead of our country, an NGO. It would be like us appointing the Nature Conservancy to run our national park system. Completely different way of thinking than what we do. What an opportunity for us to learn, because it's so different. Okay? And but they also are in one of these situations where academia and the management community, and especially being an NGO, where do they fit and how do they build their capacity? Okay? And they're in a neighborhood that has a lot going on. Okay? So if you think of the Jordanians right now, and they have a number of different protected areas in the country, but they also got big issues with refugees that are coming from Syria and Iraq, and they have Israel and Palestine and Lebanon and Egypt. I mean, they're like this place in the middle of the Arab Spring that has maintained a real stable presence. They don't have oil. They don't have some of the minerals that neighbors have. So what they have is peace and security and conservation and tourism. So as a result, they are a major tourism destination in that area. And people want to come to these nature reserves. Okay? It's a little counterintuitive. So with help from USAID and the State Department, they have built a training academy for ecotourism and ranger training in one of their protected areas. And also in cooperation with the Forest Service, they contacted us to see if indeed we might be able to help them with some of the curricular design for that program. Okay? So their institute is meeting a series of needs, but they need a more conservation-oriented economic development model in Jordan. They need to understand how to guide and get people to have good experiences. They need great rangers to monitor biodiversity and those kinds of things. And they really need to understand how to do this sustainable tourism model without destroying what they have. Okay? So those are the things that they wanted to talk to us about. Mayan and Hassan, both alumni of our international seminar said Montana does that sort of thing because we saw it when we were on the seminar. And they contacted us and said, come on over, let's see what we can do. And so after a couple of meetings, we got Perry Brown, our provost, joined us. And we learned about the way they manage things. Each park has its own unique socioeconomic development program. This one, the community builds soap, and they make soap products. Another one works with silver. Another one works with grape, what they can do with grapes. So they have, one does calligraphy. It's amazing. When you come there as a visitor, they're going to teach you Arabic calligraphy. And it really enriches your experience. Okay? So we learned about their model, which is extremely different than ours, and decided, yes, let's try to build a partnership of some type to work together. And Natasha here is from the U.S. Forest Service. She really brokered all of this. And then Steve McCool has done considerable amount of help and work and training and teaching with us. And then the big shots, you know, Perry and Yahya, okay? So talk about a different opportunity to learn. You know, you have thousands and thousands of years of history. When you're looking at Roman buildings that are 2,000 years old, they're the young buildings. It's the stuff behind it that is really fascinating to the locals. So they bring us a different model of thinking, and we can learn a lot from it. Okay. This is at Petra, but so what we did is we got together with them and a group of their managers and leadership, and we at the university organized a workshop, took them through the process of curricular design, how we would think about it if we were working with the agency managers in our country. Not that that would translate necessarily, but it was a start, and it actually worked pretty well. So we spent a week with flip charts and trying to really figure out what their managers needed to be good at their jobs, and how could we translate that into something that a university could provide, in part at least. So we came up with some basic needs that they have. A lot of the folks, they have a policy, for example, in which at a park, they want the employment to be 100% local. And they want it to come right from the local communities. Now, not every community has an ecologist, and not every community has somebody that's well-versed in global protected area management, or even issues like climate change, or things that are driving species extinctions, these kinds of things. So we need an introduction, and we need to understand this idea of sustainability, how to plan, how to deal with social and ecological systems interacting, how to understand your ecological imperatives, and how to do field operations in the ground. Not everybody, not all of these things are the best thing to get a professor for, but some of it works out pretty well. So just this week, we hosted one of their managers and came up with this conceptual model for how we're going to work together. They have a lot of different needs, some of which a university provides pretty well. And so what UM is going to do is provide the conceptual foundations at a global level. And that will be through a distance education program where we train their managers on a series of courses. And we have a certificate in wilderness management for the domestic audience here, and we're hopeful that we can build this into a certificate at a more international level. Okay? Then they'll do a series of short courses in the parks and draw on people like their own staff, trainers from the U.S. Forest Service, experts from around the world that have particular skills and capabilities. And through that process, they can take these foundations and put them into a specific local context. I can't do that. I don't know enough about their culture, but I don't have to do it. And we get a right team together, and they can fill in for our deficiencies. We can provide something for them. We do have a lot of experience with thinking about internships, practicums, field-based experiences, and seminars, and that kind of thing. So all of us will work together to build curricula that encourages not only the person to get the skills, get the opportunity, but get the confidence of going out and trying to apply some of these things in a relatively safe environment before their job promotion is on the line with the whole thing. Okay? So that is brand new, and we just worked that out. So partnership, They're going to bring in the culture. We're going to bring in the pedagogy. We're going to hopefully get this into both English and Arabic and develop a project that has an adaptive approach. We're going to try a year, see how it goes, learn a lot. We'll refine things. We'll try the next year. Right? So those are 3 examples. Here's just a series of courses that are courses that we already offer here that at a graduate level that can easily be adapted to work in this for a global audience. So it's good for UM. This is pushing us to think a little bit about how we're going to offer our coursework. Okay, so just a few concluding things. In this experience for me, which has been highly adaptive and hard to anticipate how it's going to go, when I look back on it, we've been lucky to have great vision at the times we really needed it. The South Africans knew where they needed to go and wanted to invest in it, and that's what got us started. The people at the Forest Service knew how to integrate academia and asked us to get involved, and they knew what they were looking for, just not sure how to get it. And then I was really fortunate here to have, at the time, Dean Brown, and now Provost. The leadership at UM has been highly supportive in getting some of these things going. And when you put that sort of leadership together, it's been opening doors for 15 years. Okay? It's really important. All along, our model has been to engage the management community. The academia does not hold any kind of purchase on the right answers. But when we work together with the practitioners, we can figure out how to make our ideas and knowledge applicable to on-the-ground problems that are coming up all the time. And then, of course, the students will become the teachers if you give them the chance. And in this case, we actually have been able to see them do that. Some of them are tenured now. It's amazing how they've evolved. And if you view them as teachers from the beginning, it's a lot easier for them to get there, I think. Okay, so finally, I think that at the heart of every government, industry, community, organization, or institution is an individual person. And that person wants to grow. And our job is to try to come up with ways to help them do that. And if we can build capacity at that individual level, the collective impact is going to be quite valuable over time. However, they do have to do it in the context of an opportunity for success. If they're in an institution that is just sending somebody off for training because it's something to tick off of a spreadsheet list, it's a disservice to, I think, everybody. So from our perspective, if we're not engaged with the institutional as well as the individual level people, it's not a good partnership for us to pursue. Okay? But if we have interest at more levels, then I think it's going to work out. Capacity building takes a long time. You know, we are often looking for immediate results, action plans, and those kinds of things. But the real capacity for things to change doesn't happen overnight. And in 15 years, we're finally getting where we want to be with some of these places. Okay? Some of them are brand new. Our project with Brazil is new, and rightfully people want results quickly to come out of training, but you have to take the time to do research, learn, apply new knowledge. Just to learn how to multiculture is time-consuming, how to figure out what lessons in the U.S. make any sense at all in the Amazon, for example. Okay? And then I really want to thank all the friends. This has been relationship-based from the beginning. And one of our very first meetings with the South Africans, Charles Breen said in that meeting, we asked him, what are you here for? He said, I'm here to make friends. When I look at my career, I've worked a long time with my friends. And with my acquaintances, we get things done. But it's not the lasting work that's made sense. And I thought that was greatly insightful, and that's the way we should work with people if we want things to last. And I think about it in your day-to-day life. Who do you really spend time with in the long haul? It's the people that you like to be with. So when you're doing these things, it can't just be diagrams and polygons and all of that. You have to get out and experience the world together. You have to fail together. Okay? And then Forest Service, of course, has just been fantastic, for us. Great partner from the beginning. And so let's be friends. That's it. So here's a Montanan, 2 Israelis, a Jordanian, and an Iranian. Can you tell me which one's the Montanan? Okay. That's it. Oh.
Very good. So do you think this kind of program, especially in the regions where you're developing these programs, it only works if you have the program located there? So the model that you've been developed is more of a distance education from here, field experience over there, and then some exchanges that go with it during the program. Is that what I understand, that this kind of standard model that you've applied?
I guess so, in a sense. I mean, we have wanted to internationalize our activity. But at the heart of it is this seminar that we do here. So the largest number of people that we've worked with is in Montana, the 400 people that have come here to work. And that's more of a course that we teach here, but we don't offer that course as if we have all the answers here. We have issues that can provoke a discussion. And from within that, I think we've found relationships and potential partnerships that have really made sense. Now, serendipity brought us to South Africa, no doubt about it. I met the South Africans in India, and they said, oh, you have this distance ed program, please come here and help us figure that out. But the exchange has been, like I said, probably 2/5 US students studying in Africa and 3/5 African students studying here. So it's hard to say what the site is, you know. It's Sonia's here, and we're not sure what she's going to do for her dissertation, whether it'll be a Brazilian project or an American project that she can, you know, we'll work that out. So I don't know. I think it's more who you're working with than where you're doing it, personally.
Do you see this kind of partnership resulting in, for instance, more academic dual degree program with some of these organizations that are not academic? I understand that. That would look at us.
We've talked about so many models, you know, through the years on could we have a dual degree, could we do 2 years here, 2 years there, and I think that the partners, particularly the African partners that we've worked with, are quite wide open to flexible ideas. They've been through much more turmoil than we have institutionally over the last 15 years, and I think one of the good things of that is that they're more flexible in some ways. I'm not sure just even getting a transcript to work from Zambia, for example, to the US, they use a different grading system and they, you know, do all these things. So I think it's more of a UM issue in terms of how to develop that stuff. We can do it? Do it all the time. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity.
So we had thought about that kind of second phase.
Yeah. It's, again. Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for this outstanding audience.
Anytime.